Belief in COVID-19 misinformation is rampant, and there's a strong correlation based on which news outlet people trust. That's the finding of a new study by the Kaiser Family Foundation. It's called COVID-19 Misinformation is Ubiquitous. Kaiser gave respondents 8 false statements about COVID to gauge what people believed. Here are those false statements. First, the government is exaggerating the number of COVID-19 deaths. Next, pregnant women should not get the COVID-19 vaccine. Deaths due to the COVID-19 vaccine are being intentionally hidden by the government. The COVID-19 vaccines have been shown to cause infertility. Ivermectin is a safe and effective treatment for COVID-19. You can get COVID-19 from the vaccine. The COVID-19 vaccines contain a microchip, and the COVID-19 vaccines can change your DNA. Again, all false. 78% of those polled believe or are unsure of at least one of the false statements. Nearly a third believed at least 4 of the 8. But look at what happens when you sort respondents by which news sources they trust. Among those who trust Fox News, 36% mistakenly believe or are unsure about at least 4 of 8 false statements. One America News, 37% mistakenly believe or are unsure about at least 4 of the 8 false statements. Newsmax, that number's 46%. Now compare those numbers to those who trust information from CNN, MSNBC, Network News, NPR, and local television news. That number is much smaller. Only 11 to 16% who mistakenly believe or are unsure about at least 4 of the 8 false statements. Joining me now is Liz Hamill, Vice President and Director of Public Opinion and Survey Research at the Henry J. Kaiser Family Foundation. Why do you say correlation and not causation? Why can we not say the reason those people are so mistaken is what they're told in those news outlets?
Yeah, that's a great question, Michael. You know, that wasn't something we were able to tease out in our survey because we didn't ask people if they heard these things on those specific news outlets. It could be that people who watch those news outlets are hearing this misinformation in other places, or that they just happen to be people who are more skeptical and tend to believe things that they see, from other sources.
I know that when I talked about this on radio, I got pushback from some in the audience about the 8 statements. I'm going to put the 8 back up on the screen. I don't know, Liz, if you're able to see them, but you certainly have them all memorized. But the first among them, the government is exaggerating the number of COVID-19 deaths. Immediately, I had telephone callers who said, well, the government is. You know, they're calling everything a COVID death when it's not a COVID death. What's your response to that?
Yes. So we did test a range of statements that included things that were blatant conspiracy theories like the microchips, and they included things that were twisting of scientific concepts like the vaccines can change your DNA. This was obviously the one that led to the most confusion for people, and people were most likely to believe it. And this is a statement that has often been used to sort of downplay the seriousness of the pandemic. First of all, when it comes to this, the federal government is not in charge of recording whether a death is a COVID death or not. That is happening with physicians and medical examiners all around the country and being reported to the federal government. The CDC does provide guidance and explicitly says, it shouldn't be considered a COVID death if COVID did not directly cause or contribute to the death. But there's no evidence that the government is deliberately inflating those numbers. And in fact, many experts would say that if you just use the death count from COVID, you're sort of underestimating the true toll of the pandemic, because if you look at something like excess deaths, so the number of deaths we've had over the past year and a half compared to what we would see in a normal year, the numbers are actually much higher.
It's really stunning when you look. Let's put on the screen the media outlet continuum so that you can see Newsmax, One America, Fox, local, NPR, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's amazing that there seems to be this relationship about how more inclined you are to believe misinformation depending on whether those first couple of sources are a source that you trust and believe. Respond.
Well, we have found that people who watch those conservative news sources tend to identify as Republicans. And we found that Republicans are much more likely to believe that the news media has exaggerated the seriousness of the pandemic. And so that goes along with some of the pieces of misinformation that we trusted or that we tested. And so, I think that's part of what is behind that correlation that we're seeing there.
I know that there are other ways to slice and dice the data. Party affiliation, difference between those who are vaxxed and unvaxxed, rural versus more urban respondents. So it's not just the media, but man, oh man, that was really a stunning takeaway. Liz, thank you so much for being here.